You know that feeling when you walk into a meeting or maybe a dinner party, and there's that one person who's just sucking all the oxygen out of the room?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The person who treats a conversation like it's their own personal lecture series. We've all met them.
Right. And the standard reaction, or at least my standard reaction, is usually to shrink a little bit. You look at them and think, wow, that is a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're feeling a bit shy or, insecure that day, you feel like you're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from them.
That's the intuitive read, yes.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to map human behavior on this kind of linear scale. Weakness on one side, strength on the other.
Exactly. They're up here, untouchable, and you're down there, struggling.
It feels like a vertical hierarchy.
Exactly. But today, we are going to take that table and, well, flip it right over. Because we are diving into a really fascinating piece by Jason Wells.
Oh, this one's good.
It's called The Echo Chamber of Ego, How Superiority Preys on Insecurity, and it was on the Knowledge is King platform. And Wells has a very different map of this whole territory.
He really does.
He argues that the person hiding in the corner and the person screaming from the rooftop, they aren't opposites at all.
No. He says they're suffering from the exact same pathology.
Which is a provocative thesis, isn't it?
It is, but when you start to peel back the layers of what he calls the architecture of self-worth, it makes an uncomfortable amount of sense.
I like that phrase, architecture of self-worth.
Wells is basically arguing that what we call arrogance or a superiority complex isn't a sign of strength or abundance. It's a form of parasitism.
Parasitism. I mean, that's such a visceral word for a psychology article.
It implies feeding. It implies survival.
Yeah.
And that's the core of today's deep dive. We're going to unpack why superiority is, biologically and psychologically a dead end without a host to feed on.
And we're going to look at how this mechanism has been weaponized by politicians to literally rob people.
Oh, that LBJ quote.
We have a devastating quote from Lyndon B. Johnson coming up that just anchors this in reality. And then, finally, we'll get to what Wells calls the antidote.
And the antidote surprised me. I was expecting maybe, some CBT tips or a breathing exercise.
Me too. But the source goes in a very, very specific spiritual direction.
It does. It moves from the psychological to the sociological and then, to the theological. But we'll get there.
So let's start with the diagnosis. The article kicks off with this metaphor of the counterfeit coin.
Right.
Wells writes that the superiority complex and the inferiority complex are two sides of the same counterfeit coin. Break that down for us. Why counterfeit?
Well, think about what a coin actually represents in an economy. It's a store of value. It's a symbol of worth.
Okay.
If you have a solid gold coin in your pocket, you don't need to run around the marketplace screaming, "Hey, everyone, check out my gold coin. It's real. I promise it's real."
Right. You just know it's there. It has intrinsic value.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
That is authentic self-worth.
Yeah.
It's quiet because it's self-sufficient. But a counterfeit coin, that is a whole different story.
But it has no real value.
None. Its only value comes from convincing someone else to accept it as real. So Wells is arguing that both the arrogant person and the insecure person are walking around with pockets full of, fakes. They both lack that internal gold.
So the internal state is identical. They both feel empty.
Yes, the hollowness is the same. The only difference is the strategy they use to hide it.
Okay.
The person with the inferiority complex looks at their fake coin, knows it's fake, and feels shame. They try to hide it, they withdraw.
They internalize it as, I am worthless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the superior person, they handle that same lack of value by aggressively inflating its perceived worth. They're bluffing.
You're putting on a
A
performance.
huge performance.
Yeah.
They're saying, no, look, this is worth a fortune. I am better than you. My coin is huge. But the crucial insight here is that the arrogance is just a frantic attempt to cover up the fact that they're bankrupt inside.
Which brings us back to that parasite metaphor. If the arrogance is just a bluff, why does it need a host? Why can't they just be arrogant alone in a room?
Because a bluff requires an audience. You cannot be superior in a vacuum. If you are alone on a desert island, you can be confident, you can be capable, you can be strong, but you can't be superior.
Because superiority is a comparative metric. It needs a lesser something to exist.
That is such an important distinction. Confidence is, I can do this. Superiority is, I can do this better than you.
And that you is the key.
That better than you is the food. Wells writes that the superiority complex cannot sustain itself. It's not a perpetual motion machine. It needs to feed on the perceived inferiority of others.
It's like a vampire that starves if no one is afraid of it.
That's a perfect analogy. The
Hmm.
superior person needs to scan their environment and find someone, a colleague, a partner, a stranger online, who is willing to accept the role of inferior.
They need a dance partner.
They need someone to agree to the transaction. I'll be the big guy, you be the small guy. And if you find someone who already feels small, well, it's a perfect toxic match.
So the superior person gets their validation. See, I am better than that.
And tragically, the inferior person gets their worldview confirmed too. See, I really am worse than him.
It's a destructive symbiosis.
Totally. It creates this closed loop that diminishes both of them. It traps them in a game of relative value rather than intrinsic value. You're never just good. You're only ever better than or worse than.
It sounds exhausting.
The high anxiety way to live.
So, okay, let's bring this down to the ground level. If you're the listener, and let's be honest, we've all been on both sides of this at some point, how do you break that cycle?
Yeah.
How do you stop feeding the parasite?
This is where Wells introduces a concept he calls the shield of authentic self-worth. But the mechanism he describes is about removing the latch-on point.
No latch-on point. I love that imagery. It sounds like something from rock climbing.
It's a very mechanical description of a psychological state. Think about Velcro. For Velcro to stick, you need the hard little hooks on one side and the fuzzy loops on the other.
Okay.
The superiority complex is the side with the hooks. It's just flailing around, desperately looking for something fuzzy to grab onto.
And the loops are our own insecurity.
Yes, that's the vulnerability. If I'm secretly insecure about my intelligence and you call me stupid, your hook latches right onto my loop. I react. I get
You
defensive.
get hooked.
You get hooked. You crumble. They win. They get their meal.
But if I'm secure in my intelligence, if I know I'm smart and capable...
But you're smooth. You're like glass. The hook hits you and it just slides right off. There's no latch-on point.
So it isn't about fighting back.
That is the most common mistake. People try to outshout the arrogant person. They try to prove, no, I am actually superior to you. But do you see what happens then?
You're just jumping into the mud with them. You're still playing their ranking game.
You're just fighting over who gets to be the parasite and who has to be the host. The no latch-on strategy is radical non-engagement.
It's looking at them and realizing, oh, you're hungry, you're looking for a meal, but I'm not food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that completely changes the dynamic. It almost makes you feel pity for them instead of anger.
And that's what leads to what the source calls the retreat of the ego.
Yeah. When the parasite realizes there is no food here, no reaction, no submission, no validation, it has to leave. It creates this vacuum. The arrogant person often gets very confused because their whole strategy just collapsed.
It reminds me of the gray rock method that people talk about. You become as boring as a rock.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
But this is where Wells takes it a step further. This is where the article really shifts gears and becomes something much bigger than just self-help.
Right.
He points out that this glitch in human psychology, this need to feel better than, has been scaled up. It's been weaponized.
Yeah, this was the part of the article that really made me sit up. We go from office politics to, well, national politics. And he drops this quote from Lyndon B. Johnson that is just radioactive.
It is one of the most cynical and yet probably one of the most accurate assessments of American sociology ever recorded.
Okay, let me read it, just so we get the specific wording. LBJ said, "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best black man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you."
I mean, it just stops you in your tracks, doesn't it?
It's brutal. But let's dissect that. It's not just about racism. It's about racism as a distraction from robbery.
That is the key insight.
Yeah.
Wells calls this the societal mirror of the individual ego problem. Just as an insecure person needs someone to look down on, political elites can manufacture a collective ego for a whole group of people.
We might be poor, we might be struggling, but hey, at least we aren't them.
Correct. And look at the mechanism LBJ describes. He won't notice you're picking his pocket. This is the classic distract and divide strategy.
Right.
If I can keep you focused on maintaining your imaginary superiority over that group down the street, you won't notice that I'm hoarding all the resources.
It is an ego tax.
That is a brilliant way to put it, an ego tax. People are literally willing to pay in cash, in their quality of life, just to buy that feeling of status.
He'll empty his pockets for you. That implies they're actively participating.
Because that psychological need is so deep. Remember the counterfeit coin. If a population feels stripped of its dignity, if they have no internal self-worth, They are desperate for external validation.
And the politician comes along and says, here's your validation. You're part of the superior group.
It's an addictive drug, and you will vote against your own economic interests to keep that supply coming.
It really shows how dangerous this parasite is. It
Yeah.
doesn't just ruin a family dinner, it prevents class solidarity. It stops people from realizing, hey, the lowest white man and the best black man are both getting screwed by the guy in the suit.
Exactly. Unity is the greatest threat to a power structure built on hierarchy. So the system must constantly inject the virus of superiority to keep those wedges in place. It's predation, pure and simple.
So it's a pretty bleak picture. We're trapped in these ego games personally, and we're being manipulated by them politically. But the source doesn't just leave us there.
No, and the pivot here is fascinating because Wills doesn't turn to a clinical psychologist or a political theorist for the solution. He turns to a spiritual text.
He cites the Quran, specifically Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 49.13.
Yes. And I think it's important to say, even if you're not religious, the logic he extracts from this verse is incredibly sound. It offers a structural fix to the structural problem we just laid out.
Okay, so let's walk through the verse. It starts with, O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another.
Okay, pause there for a second. This immediately addresses the divide part of the strategy. The source argues that diversity, the fact that we have different tribes and races, isn't an accident. And it's definitely not a ranking system. It's designed for mutual knowledge.
That you may know one another, not rank one another.
Right. The purpose of difference is lateral connection, not vertical ranking. It flattens a whole hierarchy immediately. If my tribe's purpose is to get to know your tribe, there's no better. There's just different.
It removes the competition. But then the verse drops the other shoe. It gives a new metric. It says, indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you.
And this is what he calls the divine antidote. The Arabic word used here is taqwa. It's often translated as righteousness or piety. But in this context, Wells defines it as your internal character and moral integrity. And this changes everything. It completely shifts the scoreboard.
How so?
Well, think about all the markers of superiority we talked about. Race, wealth, job title, social class. What do they all have in common?
They're external. You can see them.
And because you can see them, you can rank them. My house is bigger. My skin is lighter. I have a PhD. You don't. It's easy to build a hierarchy on visible markers. But taqwa,
It's in the heart. You can't see it.
you cannot quantify it. I can't look at you and say, I have 20% more righteousness than you today. Only the divine knows that. So if the only metric that matters is hidden, the whole social ranking game just collapses.
That's really profound. It's not saying everyone is the same. It's saying the things that make you different don't make you better.
Exactly. It dismantles the inferiority complex because it says you come from the same source. You're not inherently less than anyone. And it obliterates the superiority complex because it says your external status means nothing about your true value.
It forces you to look inward. If I want to be noble, I can't just rely on my passport or my bank account. I have to actually work on my character.
It moves the effort from proving value to generating value.
Which brings us all the way back to the idea of the shield.
He calls it the choice between peace and predation. When you're chasing superiority, you're a predator. You're constantly hunting for that fix of validation. It is an insatiable need, as he puts it. You're never full.
Because there's always someone with a bigger boat or a better title.
Always. It is a state of chronic anxiety. But peace. Peace comes from stepping out of the ranking system completely. It comes from accepting that your value is intrinsic and your only duty is to be righteous, to be good, honest, and kind.
It's energy conservation, isn't it? Think about how much energy we waste trying to impress people or feeling bad because someone snubbed us.
It is a massive drain. And when you stop paying that ego tax, you get all that energy back. You become, as the source concludes, an unmovable force.
Leaving them with nothing to latch onto.
And we're back to the Velcro. When you operate from that place of taqwa, or authentic self-worth, whatever you want to call it, you don't have the loops. The racist, the bully, the micromanager, they can throw whatever they want at you.
But you know the metric they're using is fake. You know your coin is counterfeit, so you just don't take it.
It's almost like seeing the code in the Matrix. Once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
You see someone screaming at a waiter, and instead of thinking, wow, that person's powerful, you think, wow, that person is starving.
That parasite is desperate for a host.
Yes. It changes your emotional reaction from fear to, well, understanding. And that's where the power is. You aren't reacting, you're observing.
It's a heavy topic for sure, but it's also incredibly liberating.
I feel lighter just talking about it. It's nice to have a name for the ghost in the machine. It is. You have to see the game to stop playing it. And once you stop playing, you realize you never needed to win in the first place.
So here's the challenge for you, for the listener today. We've talked about how this dynamic works, right? From the individual ego all the way to the political stage, we know that superiority requires your consent.
It demands your participation. It cannot exist without it.
So look around. Who in your life, or even in the media you consume, or the politicians you listen to, who is trying to hand you a package of inferiority right now? Who's trying to make you feel small just so they can stand a little taller?
And the real question is, what happens if you just don't sign for the package?
What happens if you just say, no thanks, I'm good? I have a feeling the results might be pretty disruptive.
Disruptive in the best possible way.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's been a good one.
A necessary one. Thank you.
Keep your coins real, everyone.
Yeah.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.